parents are at a loss to know what to do to help their children with comprehension. What advice can you give to parents?
It's one of the most difficult things to help children with because it's something that doesn't rely on technique. It's something that can only be done over a long period of time with sustained effort and interest. And in order to improve comprehension, what is really required is to improve English. And that's why it can't be done quickly. And in order to improve English, what children need to do is to hear good English spoken, to then speak good English the way they hear it spoken, and to write good English. So, and they should also, of course, read good English, which you can find especially in classic children's literature. Now, to hear good English spoken, it's not that easy. There aren't that many sources of good spoken English. One of the few reliable sources of good spoken English is the BBC. So BBC News or certain state radio stations, not so much the ones unfortunately aimed at children, but the likes of Radio 2, Radio 4 would have good spoken English. One thing that I would suggest that parents and children do, which is not the easiest thing to do, is to actually correct one another when they speak incorrectly. Because that way what's happening is you're tuning your ear to good English and noticing when something differs from standard good English. And that becomes a habit. And that's really the sort of dedication that's required in order to improve English. And of course, the better your English, the better your comprehension. Now, with comprehension, it also comes down to your reading skills, which is not quite exactly the same as English, but you absolutely need to have really sound command of English in order to be good at comprehension. Another element of comprehension is actually the way that you read, but the way of reading effectively I'm going to do as a separate video.
So that covers general comprehension of English, which is obviously vitally important. Are there any specific bits of advice you can give when you're talking about an exam situation where they've got a comprehension piece to answer questions about?
There is one tip that children can practice which they may find suits them very well. Some children do and some children don't, but it's worth trying if your child hasn't tried it before. And that is, if the child is given a passage to read, followed by a set of questions to answer, and especially if the time is very tight, they have to pick out the relevant information quite quickly, a good or an effective strategy would be to quickly read the questions first and keep them in mind whilst reading the passage. That way, it's easier to pick out the relevant information rather than trying to understand the entire passage and not knowing which bits are going to be relevant. So in a situation where time is tight, this is a strategy that children can practice and may find that it works to their advantage.